I hope I never have to play for anybody else other than the Seattle Seahawks. The reality is, in professional sports, things change, and times change, and coaches and people and everything else. And one of my dreams is to have always played for the same team for a really, really long time, and my whole entire career. And that is true, excellence. That is true. That's a true legacy.
That's Russell Wilson from the PFTPM podcast, December of 2017. He said in that same interview he wants to play until he's 45. But here's the dilemma. His contract runs through 2019. He was on The Tonight Show last month talking about the great potential of being the highest paid player in league history. As it turns out, the Seahawks and Russell Wilson have been negotiating a contract, and he has supplied them with an April 15 deadline to get it done. There's no or else in terms of a holdout, because I'm told he will not hold out under any set of circumstances. He'll be there for all voluntary and involuntary off-season, regular season, preseason activities. But Peter, how does he get that contract he wants if he really doesn't have any immediate leverage by way of withholding services? Your thoughts on what Russell Wilson is trying to do?
Yeah, I've always thought the one thing that Mark Rodgers, the agent for Russell Wilson, brought to the table that's a little bit different than most agents in football. Understand, Mark Rodgers is almost exclusively a baseball agent. And over the years, when I have had conversations with him, he has never been afraid of playing year to year, especially when you've got a durable guy like Russell Wilson. Why would you be afraid? You saw what happened with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins made over a 5-year period, gigantic, including the current 3 years, a gigantic money, and every dime was guaranteed. Obviously the first 2 times because they were in tags, but now the 3 years is totally guaranteed for him. And I believe that if Russell Wilson has to play under the franchise tag maybe 1 year or 2, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I also believe that the Seattle Seahawks, understand that if they sign him long term at, let's just say, 33 or whatever the number is, 34, somebody obviously is going to hopscotch that, but they will spend less money if they sign him at an average number of about 33 or 34 than they would if they waited a couple of years to, sign him year to year and then, sign him for the long term. The one other point I would make, Mike, is I don't think John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, can be cowed into anything. He has gotten beat up time and again. Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor. He has really been beat up locally in Seattle over the last few years. And what has he said? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He just simply views that as the cost of doing business. He doesn't whine. He doesn't complain. So, as far as an April 15th deadline for Russell Wilson, I've not talked to John Schneider about it, so I don't know. But John Schneider probably slept pretty soundly last night, is all I can say.
My theory on all of this is that Russell Wilson does want to go year to year. When we do the calculation, the numbers get huge very quickly. In 2020, The franchise tender based on his cap number this year is $30.34 million. The next year, $36.4. If they tag him for a third time, it spikes to $52.43 million. If you add up the next 4 years of what he would make if he goes year to year, it averages $34 million a year. So I think he wants to go year to year, and he's giving them a window to try to change his mind. That's his leverage. His leverage is, hey, this is your opportunity to do the thing you want me to do. You want me to sign a long-term deal. You got until April 15 to put an offer on the table that I'll sign. Otherwise, I'm going year to year, and we'll see if and when I hit the open market. And if I do, you'll have a chance to try to sign me along with anyone else who may want to sign me. Here's the other point, too, Peter, and this is where I think Mark Rodgers is going. And you hit the nail on the head. He's got one current NFL client, and that's Russell Wilson. So he doesn't have all these other relationships and issues and tentacles to worry about. He can focus on getting the best deal for Russell Wilson. I think Wilson is going to try to get what others have tried and failed to get. Cousins tried to get it. Darrelle Revis tried to get it. Maybe others have tried to get it. Wilson, I think, is going to try to get a percentage of the salary cap as guaranteed compensation. So as the market changes, as the cap spikes with a new CBA, new TV deals, gambling money, legalized gambling revenues that flow to the NFL, as that pie grows and grows and grows, and the cap goes up and up and up, he's going to want to have that protection. So he always gets 17, 18, 19% of the cap, wherever that number goes. I think that's what they want, and the question is, will the Seahawks give it to him?
It's a great question. If I were the Seahawks in that particular case, at least for now, I think I'd rather go year to year. But I do think that eventually the only way that makes sense for the Seahawks is trying to make a deal long-term with a guy who is as good a human being and a representative of your team as you're going to find. Mike, I would not be remotely surprised at what you're saying, because Mark Rodgers is a very, very smart guy. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. And you know what? I think he's right. I really think he's right. If you believe that you are the best, the best option for the Seahawks, and the Seahawks know it, why wouldn't they do that and say, okay, we'll adjust your salary every year to be 18% of the cap, or pick 17, whatever the number is?
And think about this. I mean, they're looking at $30.34 million devoted exclusively to Russell Wilson next year, 2020, under the cap. And you can't play any games reducing the cap number in the short term unless you sign him to a long-term deal. He's got the leverage. The next year, $36.4, same thing. You're stuck with that. And we're only 3 years away from the Seahawks facing the dilemma, Peter, of having to pay the guy $52.43 million for 1 year. I don't know where the salary cap's going to be then, but that is beyond unprecedented to think of that kind of a cap number for one player. But that's his leverage. His leverage is, you change my mind with a long-term contract by April 15, or I'm going to continue this path of Kirk Cousins, because I ain't Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a middle-of-the-pack guy that made $128 million over 5 years. I'm one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league, and I'm going to ride this thing out 1 year at a time. And either you or somebody else is going to make me the highest paid player in league history, maybe by a wide margin.
I just think that at some point, some way, this is going to get done. Just because I know the affection the Seahawks have for Wilson. I know the affection he has for them. And Mark Rodgers is not an incendiary device. He isn't. He's a reasonable guy. And, it's easy for me to say that. I'm not negotiating with him. But I believe that this thing is going to get done because it makes too much sense to not get done.
The best thing they did the last time around, they being Mark Rodgers and Russell Wilson, he had just finished his 3rd year. And because he wasn't a first-round pick, the Seahawks had to deal with it because they were going to get into the franchise tag dance if they didn't. It was only a 4-year extension. We've seen guys like Aaron Rodgers do these 6 years. He did a 6-year contract back in 2013. He did another 5-year deal. A 4-year extension, when you are only in the league 3 years, that sets you up to really put pressure on a team while you're entering your prime. I mean, Russell Wilson said he wants to play until he's 45. We're seeing more and more of these guys play very well into their late 30s. Tom Brady's playing very well at 41. He's still got a lot of prime years to earn. And Russell Wilson is moving into a formula, if he chooses to follow it year to year, that could unlock the kind of wealth that we've never seen in NFL players.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.